Hello everyone, I'm Shalika De Silva. On behalf of Samadhi Buddhist Foundation, I would like to welcome all of you to our this month's Clarity of Mind through Mindfulness session. Today our topic is Karuna, kindness. Now I would like to invite our teacher Venerable Chandarathana Thero to take us a deep dive into this Buddha's teaching on kindness. Thank you Bante Teruvan Saranai.
Thero Sannai, hope you can hear me.
Yes Bante, we can hear you.
Fine. So basically, today I thought of, as Shalika mentioned, we were discussing Brahma Viharas. 4 Brahma Viharas we were discussing. Last time, actually, we discussed about metta, loving kindness. And today, so therefore, we thought of going to the next topic, that is Karuna, or compassion. So loving kindness, compassion, altruistic joy, and equanimity are the 4 Brahma Viharas, or divine abodes that Buddha mentioned, and those are quite helpful. And actually, a world like today, those are extremely helpful. And last time, actually, we discussed loving kindness, where one has in a way, kind of a friendly attitude towards another person, and one feel internally some sort of friendliness. So actually here in Karuna, the taste is little different in the sense, here actually the person that we are in a way being compassionate is somewhat in a trouble. Now in the loving kindness, there is no such thing. The other person may be doing well, and even to him or her, we can incorporate loving kindness. We can spread loving kindness. Here, Karuna, compassion is actually little different, where the person that to whom we are trying to maintain Karuna or to spread compassion is maybe in a little or a deep trouble. Therefore, we feel empathetic, and as a result of that, we are feeling compassionate. And before going to someone else's situation, we can actually think about our own situation. And if we don't have any self-compassion towards ourselves, then it's very difficult to have compassion towards another person. So therefore, this is a very important point, that are we simply neglecting ourselves and trying to be compassionate, trying to be kind to another person or group of people? So then we have gone somewhere wrong. So these are certain points that we have to be careful when we are trying to be compassionate. So sometimes people, so they are compassionate, true, but they neglect themselves. So that is some wrong way of being compassionate, where you are neglecting yourself. You are completely neglecting your well-being, and you are trying to be compassionate, kind to another person or group of another people. And on the other hand, sometimes we have sort of a compassion which is overwhelming ourselves. So that is also, we can see when people are trying to be compassionate to another person or group of people. So they are being sort of driven by compassion. In that sense, we have lost the balance, because it is true that we have to be compassionate. We have to help another person. But at the same time, if those thoughts, those compassionate thoughts are coming to the mind, we should be able to balance them. So that is where the mindfulness come into the picture. We'll discuss that in short while. So there are such various areas that we have to think of when we are discussing compassion. So self-compassion is one important aspect that we have to think of. Say, for example, practically, assume that you are doing say some sort of a meditation, say anapanasati, mindfulness on breathing. Even here we have to have a fair amount of self-compassion, because we expect the mind to be fairly well established on the breath, but mind doesn't remain like that. It constantly go to another object. There are many distractions. Again and again it is shifting. sometimes we become sort of angry about ourselves. We are looking down ourselves. We are even cursing ourselves. And that is the place that we have to apply self-compassion. That is single one place that we have to apply self-compassion. Because we have to admit, so this is the situation. This is the present situation of my mind. So it is completely vulnerable, it's completely subject to various distractions. The person is not yet tamed. As a result of that, you have to have some self-compassion towards yourself. So I have to develop this situation. I have to improve this situation. I have to overcome these distractions. So as a result of that, you are now applying self-compassion. Okay, you are sympathetic to yourself, compassionate to yourself, and you are slowly bringing your mind back to the object. So you are trying to be mindful on breath, and the breath, so the mind has shifted, and you are recognizing that situation, and you are trying to be compassionate to yourself, and slowly you bring it back to the breath. So likewise, again and again, you have to apply self-compassion. In a way, it has to go hand in hand with the development of the mindfulness. So therefore, when we are talking mindfulness, sometimes people say that you have to separately develop compassion. It is not. So while developing mindfulness, you can actually have another attribute that has to be incorporated to the mindfulness practice, that is compassion. It may start with self-compassion. Without having self-compassion, if you are completely kind of going through kind of a striving, harming yourself and or torturing yourself, then we have lost the balance. So if we are able to maintain such a balance where mind distracts, yes, I understood that, you are mindful about it. So I am trying to be compassionate to myself, to my mind, and then slowly bring it back. So this attitude really helps. It does not harm the internal calmness or internal peace. So that is one important aspect. Assume that you are doing, say, walking meditation, mindfulness on walking. So at that time, also the same situation. Say you are trying to be mindful on the steps, touching sensations, but mind has gone to somewhere else because your eyes are open. Maybe you are in an open environment. So as a result of that, mind get distracted. Now you got to again bring it back. So you have to understand, okay, my mind has distracted. I have to be compassionate to the mind, the situation. So let me bring it back. So if you are adding more defilements to the situation, that you are being angry, you are regretting, so then in a way you are not applying compassion where it is necessary. And then when it comes to the other people, so compassion towards others. So basically here, wish for another being to be free from suffering. Now you have a kind of a genuine wish. It is not that you are trying to show off and you are trying to be a social worker and show that the others, I am the most compassionate person in the world. It is not like that. So you have to have a kind of a very genuine feeling that I have to help the other person. He is in a trouble. He is in a problem. So I have to help him. So you feel it. You feel that kindness. So that is one feeling. That is the main, say, we can say kind of a definition of compassion, where you see someone is in a kind of a trouble and you feel it, that you got to help him, and you are even doing it. It is not simply you stop at the thought level and you understand the thought, the compassionate thought you have, and you feel that someone else is suffering, and as a result of that you actively do something. If possible, you are actively doing something. And when you feel compassionate to the others, because you understand, okay, they are also in a trouble, say another group of people are in another way of trouble. So likewise, you feel this suffering is something common. It is not only for yourself or not only to your country. Suffering is something very common. So this common attribute, it is not something unique. It is not only to you. And you understand, okay, suffering is available everywhere. Many people are going through various different kinds of suffering. So when you understand that perspective, it is more realistic. And when you understand like that, you can actually bear your own suffering, because you see that it is not uh, that assume that you also time to time go through suffering, various different difficult situations. But when you see is that many others are also going through various difficulties, so that actually helps us to bear our own suffering. That is also another, we can say, kind of a benefit that we can get through this compassion side. Because if you don't feel that the others are suffering, that you are the only one suffering, so then that means you are more and more going to suffer, because you don't have any kind of solution, and you don't understand it is kind of a general universal principle, suffering. So that is why Buddha also discussed suffering as the first noble truth. So when we understand suffering as a noble truth, when we understand suffering as a common thing, then in a way we are coming down to the earth. We are really become humble, and we are well grounded, and then we actually even various conflicts, arguments may go away, because you understand you are in the same level, you come to the same level of the other people, and you are also suffering, the others are also suffering. Suffering is something common. So if we understand this way, most of the difficult situations, most of the arguments, most of the conflicts can be overcome, because we understand they are also suffering, and I am also suffering. So how about reducing both sides suffering? So likewise, we can come to a kind of a very good agreement, kind of a very good understanding, if we understand this common nature of suffering. So in order to do that, in a one way, we have to be compassionate to the others. Similarly, we have to be compassionate to ourselves. So if both sides are there, then it is very likely that we can come to a agreement, or we can come to some sort of a situation where both sides can help each other. And there are various recent findings happen to regarding the compassion. Actually, they have used various scientific methods to understand what are the positive attributes, benefits of compassion practice. So they actually have understood that it is not simply the thought, but if you are genuinely doing it, if you genuinely feel it, even if you can improve it, then there is a noticeable changes even happen in the brain. So they actually have found it. And it is not simply a kind of an emotional response, but kind of a commitment that there are certain reasons that you can do it better, and the others also have certain reasons, and you know that this is the common reason or proper ground. As a result of that, you do a kind of a commitment. So that in a way, kind of a fair amount of change happen in yourself. So previously, say you simply neglect all these things, and you simply kind of a self-centered person. But now you are sort of looking around and find out how others are going through various difficult situations, and you understand their situation. And as a result of that, you have a genuine sympathetic feeling that you want to help them, and now you are doing it, you engage with it. At the same time, you maintain some amount of balance where you are not overwhelming yourself with compassion. So that is another area, as I mentioned before. So knowing the limits, knowing what is our caliber, knowing what are our skills, knowing what is our wealth, or what are the areas that I can help, is also very important. So that is where compassion has to go hand in hand with wisdom. So when we discuss about the Buddha, so it is mentioned, Buddha is the role model where compassion and wisdom is properly in the balance. But all the others, actually, either wisdom is too much, there are no compassion, less compassion. Or sometimes compassion is too much, there is no wisdom. So how to balance these two? How to go, have a kind of a character, personality where you are compassionate, at the same time you are wise. You know where to be compassionate. You know the limit of maintaining your compassion. You know the extent that to what level that you can help another person. And also you are not self-centered, a selfish person that you simply mind yourself and neglecting others. So that is the other extreme. So compassion and wisdom therefore has to have go hand in hand, Panya and Karuna. And it's mentioned that Buddha, because of his wisdom, he sometimes go for some secluded practice. He live alone and he go to a forest and develop himself, and develop in the sense, I mean, maintain the seclusion. But on the other hand, because of his compassion, he visits the alms round, he visit even very poor families, he go to various discussions, and he instructs monks, he teaches Dhamma. So likewise, the compassion aspect is there. So Buddha, in a way, represent both sides, compassion as well as the wisdom. And sometimes we try to project certain situation. Still, the situation is going through in a, say, negative way, but we project certain situations. Such kind of projections or certain expectations are, in a way, making some sort of a frustration in ourselves. So we want to be compassionate, it's true. But while being compassionate, when we are developing such feeling, if we always expect that the situation has to go to the, say, positive side, say someone is suffering, someone is going through some sickness, and you are attending him, and you are trying to help him, and you are doing various things, and there's a huge expectation he should get well. So I'm helping, he should get well, quickly he should get well. So that kind of a higher expectation sometimes even harm compassion, because you are driven by such expectation, and you are expecting him to get recovered, but that expectation is beyond our control. So we don't know when he's going to recover. We are doing our best. It is good that he is recovering quickly, but expecting him to recover very quickly is beyond our control. So once we introduce this kind of expectations into the picture, say there are various situations, say someone is doing something wrong, and you are trying to help him by giving him proper advices, and you expect him to come to the correct direction. You expect him to understand what you are trying to tell, because you are doing it out of compassion. But sometimes they can't understand. Sometimes they are still going on in the wrong direction, still continuing to do the wrong thing. So then sometimes we become frustrated, because I am helping him, I am trying to be compassionate, but he's still doing the wrong thing. Because in a way, I have a very high expectation, thinking that now I am advising him, he should behave like this, he should recover like this. So likewise, the expectations, when we put to the situation, so there may be certain difficulties to ourselves. So when we are having kind of an open type of compassion, okay, I'm helping him. If he is getting well early, getting well quickly, really good. If he is not, what to do? So that is the situation. So we have to admit that everything is impermanent, everything is in a way, we can't have much control, even though I am trying to help. So likewise, we have to be fairly realistic when we are maintaining this compassion, when we are trying to develop compassion. And when it comes to applying compassion in daily lives, so this is the most important thing in a way. So it is true that we can develop compassion while on the cushion, like we did in the loving kindness meditation. So a similar approach can be taken here. Say, for example, you are developing anapanasati, and after you somewhat have some amount of concentration developed, probably you can memorize or remember some person who is in a little trouble. So now you got to recognize this feeling. Okay, I have a kind of a compassion, kind of a kindness towards that person. So he may be your father, your mother, your child, your husband, your wife, your friend, or someone else who is not really related to you, anyone. So it is easy to start developing compassion when you understand such a person. Assume that someone is having a cancer. Now you know he is a good person and now he is in a deep trouble. Now you feel compassion. Now this feeling, the compassionate feeling has to be recognized. Like say example, when we do a metta meditation, we actually have selected a person, kind of a respected person. To him, actually, we start spreading loving kindness. So this is an easy access. So we should properly understand what is loving kindness. It is true that I am trying to be loving, spreading metta to self. But more than that, when you understand, okay, there is a very good person, he is helping me, I am respecting him. So let him be well and happy. Let him be well and happy. May he be well and happy. So likewise, when he genuinely sort of wish that person be well and happy, be free from suffering, so then actually we start to feel the correct tone or correct taste of loving kindness. Now here in the compassion, it's a little different. The other person is some sort of a trouble. Say, as I mentioned, someone is going through a cancer. Now he's going through the medication, chemotherapy, etc., etc. So now you understand he's in deep trouble. Now you feel it. You got to feel it. The compassion. I'm kind. You are kind to that person because he's in the trouble. So that feeling has to be recognized. It is different from loving kindness. Another person is in a deep trouble, and to him now you have compassion. So this compassion now you are spreading. Now once you recognize that sort of a compassion, then you can spread that further and further. You can apply it to another person. You can apply it to another group of people. You can apply even to animals. You can be compassionate to animals, and you can be compassionate to various other nations. So likewise, you can even expand compassion to many groups. And you don't need to now limit to only a particular group. You can be compassionate to all the people in this country, all the people in this whole world, every being in the whole universe. So likewise, when we are developing compassion, you can apply the same technique what we discussed in the loving kindness, where you are slowly expanding your compassion so that you are very much like becoming a source of compassion. So you are emanating compassion, you are emanating loving kindness as we did in the last time. So here we are emanating, spreading compassion to all the beings in the universe. So this is where we are reaching the Brahma Vihara level. At the beginning, it is not really the the what you call as the Karuna Cheto Vimutti, the freedom of mind through compassion. So at the beginning, what we have is a very limited, focused kind of compassion. We are compassionate to a particular person, or we are compassionate to oneself. So it is fairly focused. But once we are familiar with this compassion, then we can slowly expand it, slowly expand to a group of people, slowly expand to a people, all the beings in this front direction. We are expanding the, say, compassion towards all the beings in the right direction. We are expanding compassion, spreading compassion towards all the beings in the rear direction, to the left direction, up direction, lower direction. So likewise, now you are slowly developing, spreading, expanding compassion. At that time, actually, you break all the limitations. You break all the boundaries. Now there are no boundaries. You are not only compassion to a particular group of people or certain person, but now you have a universal kind of a compassion. So that is where the opening happens in the mind. That is where the freedom of the mind happens, where you have unlimited kind of compassion. So at that time, your mind becomes very expanded. It is not kind of a focused, limited kind of a compassion. Through compassion, now your mind has become completely open. No boundaries at all. Now this situation we call as Karuna Cheto Vimutti, where the freedom of mind through compassion. And we can discuss certain other areas like We sometimes have certain attitudes towards our friends or our members of the family. But sometimes it appear like compassion, but it may be a little different. Say, for example, if you have a kind of a compassion towards a close friend, say you have a kind of a close friend and you have certain compassion towards him, but sometimes this compassion has kind of mixed up with certain kind of an attachment. Similarly, say you have kind of a compassion towards husband and wife between they. So probably there may be little amount of attachment, maybe even expectations are intruded to the situation. So it is not that we are maintaining the true compassion, the pure compassion, but certain other, say, defiled situations have come to the situation. So likewise, when we are developing compassion, so it has to be well understood, as well as you have to be careful of these, say, other discrepancies which can happen to the practice. And mindfulness and compassion is another interesting aspect where, say, if one is completely self-centered and if I am only thinking about myself, so then that indicates that compassion is very difficult to develop, because you are extremely self-centered, you are extremely selfish in a way. On such a situation, it's difficult to be compassionate. So for you to be compassionate, so this I-making, mind-making, this self-centeredness, ego has to be a little reduced. Then only you can feel that someone else's situation. If you only say thinking about yourself, never think about the others, you can't see someone else's trouble, then you don't feel the compassion at all. Now, if your I-making, if your ego, if your self-centered nature has somewhat reduced, then you actually may start to feel it's a kind of a common thing. Actually, in the mindfulness practice, Buddha always talks about iti ajjattang va kaye kayanupassee vihirati, iti bahiddha va kaye kayanupassee vihirati. Basically, you are developing mindfulness in terms of yourself. Ajjatta, that is the internal. And similarly, you are developing mindfulness with respect to the others, the outside. Bahiddha. So these both aspects are there. So therefore, Buddha mentioned it is not only that we are developing mindfulness simply using our, say, self-centered type of or person-oriented situation, but once we develop mindfulness, slowly we can have similar mindfulness by considering the outside aspects. So you feel that you are also breathing, another person is also breathing. You are also recognizing various, say, characteristics while walking, and you can inferentially understand, okay, another person also walking and he may also feel the same thing. It may start with this kind of very basic, obvious kind of situation. But as we develop, so these understanding will start to grow. You start with kind of self-awareness, but later you can be aware of other people as well. You are in a way generalizing this understanding. You are spreading this understanding. You are inferentially including various other group of people to the practice in a way. So this is in a way expanding mindfulness. So when we are able to expand mindfulness, so that actually includes compassion, and you feel that someone else is in a trouble. You feel that someone else is going through some difficult situation, because you have your own self-awareness, and similarly you have developed a fair amount of inferential understanding about another person's situation, and you feel someone else's emotions even. So that is how interpersonal relationships going to last for a long time. So likewise, when developing mindfulness, so these attributes come to the picture, where we understand about ourselves and we are self-compassionate to ourselves. At the same time, we understand another person's situation. As a result of that, we start to be compassionate, and not only simply as an attitude or emotional attitude, but also kind of actively doing something if it is possible, and you are doing it while being mindful, and you know where you are not overwhelming the because of compassion. Because as I mentioned before, sometimes when we are having compassion, too much compassion probably can even overwhelm you. You start to cry, you start to weep because of someone else's situation, but that indicates that you have lost the balance. So you can understand how intricate or how subtle these aspects are. It is true to say, I mean, you have to be compassionate, you have to be kind. So likewise, we can tell to someone, but what are the other pitfalls available? What are the other areas that we have to consider when we are practicing this kind of a compassionate meditation, we can say. And when one is so when we are developing mindfulness, so we can actually get a correct decision, because we have the possibility of coming out of the situation and looking at it. We can look at it objectively rather than looking at it subjectively. Say we can come out of the situation, look, step back and watch the situation. So this is where we are in a way in a better situation or better standing to get the proper decision. So when you get this capability, or when you have this skill developed through mindfulness practice, that actually can be applied in a compassion situation. So you are now feeling compassionate to the other person. At the same time, you can step back and watch, step back and consider all the possibilities, how to help the other person. And now you are picking that best possibility and you are implementing it. So therefore, when you are able to associate or incorporate mindfulness and compassion together, so it is going hand in hand. So as I mentioned, it is possible to develop compassion as a separate practice. That is also possible. At the same time, while developing mindfulness, you can develop compassion in parallel. Actually, while developing mindfulness, you can develop compassion incorporated to your practice. As I mentioned, say while you are practicing breathing meditation, if your mind gets distracted, so you can be compassionate to yourself. So at that very moment, rather than feeling angry, rather than feeling frustrated, if you feel, okay, my mind has distracted, so let me compassionate to myself. I'm not yet in a proper situation. I'm not yet having enough mindfulness. I'm not yet having enough concentration. I'm not yet having enough wisdom. So you have to be compassionate to yourself. So that attribute, if you are able to recognize when things go wrong in your side, if you can have self-compassion, so your mindfulness practice will be a mechanism to develop compassion. Therefore, we can carefully, if we are applying these techniques carefully to our own practice, it's not only that we develop mindfulness, but also we are developing certain other skills. Those are quite useful to our practice. So with that, I like to conclude today's Dhamma sermon. Now, probably we'll go for 10 minutes of practice. May you sit in a comfortable position. So we are now going to develop some amount of mindfulness. Say, probably we can incorporate compassion also today. Now we can sit comfortably. Our eyes are closed, head is straight, neck also straight, shoulders in a restful situation, restful position, hands Maybe resting on your lap. Maybe you are leaning onto a chair. And you feel some pressure at your buttocks. And your legs are bent and relaxed. You can take a deep breath, hold it for a second, and then release. Come back to yourself. Now we are trying to be friends with our body. Now you can keep your attention to the areas which I am mentioning. Our eyes are gently closed. And we are not thinking about any particular problem. And we are not thinking about any other person. So we feel relaxed. And we are taking our attention to the body. Here, not somewhere else. And not in the past, not in the future, but our attention is at the present. Our eyes are gently closed. Lips are gently touching. And we maybe have a slight smile. We are trying to enjoy the present moment. Shoulders in a restful position. Arms are resting at our lap. Body straight but not rigid. And probably we are feeling some pressure at our buttocks, kind of a heaviness at our buttocks. And the legs are bent. Muscles of the legs are relaxed, not tight. And certain parts of the foot touching the ground. Now we are simply sitting, not standing, not walking, not lying down. We are in a sitting posture, comfortable sitting posture. See whether you can recognize this comfort, feeling at ease. Still your mind, if your mind distracts, try to be compassionate to yourself. Understand the situation is right, like this. So you've got to admit that. No need to be angry about yourself. If your mind distract towards the past, be compassionate to yourself and bring it back. If your mind shifts towards the future, Be compassionate to yourself and bring it back. So you can even incorporate slight amount of compassion towards during the practice. You can take a deep breath, hold it for a second, and then release. Now you can try to keep your attention at the nostril. You are trying to be aware of the breath. When you feel in breath, you can recognize it in breath. When you feel out breath, you can recognize it as out breath. Try to maintain mindfulness to each and every breath. Don't miss any breaths. Hope you can hear me.
Yes, Bhante, we can hear you.
Fine. So I'm experiencing some rain, so I'm trying to little focus my voice. So if you have any question related to today's Dhamma sermon or related to your own practice, so we can spend a couple of minutes discussing that, or else we can go to the book which we are discussing in this session. So I'd like to have some sort of a discussion if you have any questions. Anyone like to share their experiences?
Bhante, yeah, when someone will come up, I thought of just, it's like, it's not like a kind of a question, it's kind of a statement. Like, when explain about this self-compassion. So sometimes I think like it's not just me, like most of us, like we don't have much kind of a self-compassion because if something goes wrong and we kind of blame ourselves. So at the same time, I think we like overwork, and when the body says, yeah, that's kind of enough, but we just keep on, like, because we have like a really uh, long task list every day, like, we want to complete. And then when we cannot complete this, like, oh no, I have to do that, then you are tired but still keep on going. So I think as you mentioned, being mindful and at that moment, and we can first start developing self compassion. Bhante, you are muted, I think.
So that is the important thing, because if we are not mindful, all these, even the good attributes like compassion, loving kindness, sympathy, altruistic joy, these things can even overwhelm ourselves. So that is where the mindfulness is very important. Yeah, mindfulness is the one showing us where we go wrong or where we are losing the balance. So sometimes there are people, we understand he's a very good person, but maybe he's neglecting himself, maybe he's neglecting his family, but he's involved with too many other external activities. Say he's doing some social work or something else, very compassionate to the others, but not compassionate to himself or not compassionate to his close members. Very So this kind of situation we understand, okay, he has lost the balance. He don't know what is the limit. He don't know what is his capacity. Sometimes assume that you have to help another person and you are, say you are selling your own properties and you are helping another person, then where are you going to live? So likewise, so when we lost this balance, then we are in a, when we are in the trouble, then we are in the trouble. So mindfulness is the kind of a monitoring task in a way to show this balance. So on the other hand, when we develop mindfulness, one important aspect of mindfulness is that we are not a victim of the situation, rather we have the skill to come out of the situation and look at it objectively. So this is a very interesting, very powerful perspective we have in the practice of mindfulness. Say, for example, you are, say the body is walking, and while walking, you have to develop mindfulness. So how you are doing it? So you allow the body to walk as it like naturally, and like an outsider, you are experiencing it. So your foot is touching the ground, and you are experiencing it. Say your weight is transferred from one foot to the one leg to the other leg, you are experiencing it, and you are experiencing various differences in the texture. So likewise, you are like a observer, a silent observer. So your experience is one thing. So you are experiencing this present situation, present moment is another thing. So this perspective is very important, and we can have the same applied in the compassion. Say you feel compassion towards another person, and you know that you feel it. You are now being empathetic. You feel it, and assume that you are doing it as well, doing something. to help the other person. But at the same time, if you feel that, okay, I am now getting too much, I can't forget him, or I can't come back to my own calmness. I can't maintain my balance. Now I am feeling more emotional and I start to cry. So that means now we are losing the balance. So the compassion has started to overwhelm us, kind of intrude the whole mind. So that is where we have to have the balance. So how to recognize the limit? So when actually you are mindful about the presence of compassion in your mind, so that indicates that you are in a way some amount of control about the situation. Then only you can get a proper decision. Say someone else is in a deep trouble. So if you become too much emotional, if you start to cry, and if you become really, say, panic, then you can actually can't take the proper decision. Then both of you are in a trouble. But if you are able to establish mindfulness at that time, at the same time you feel compassionate towards the other person, then you can step back and see what are the various possibilities available to help the other person. So that you can't understand when you are being in a panic, when you are also frustrated, when you are also in a overwhelming situation. So in order to have the proper decision to take, you have to step back from the situation and look at it objectively. So that is where the mindfulness is very important. While you are developing compassion, or while you are maintaining compassion towards another person, that actually helps us to maintain this balance, and again will help us to get the correct decision to help the other person. And as you mentioned, so when we are doing it in a way wholeheartedly without expecting too much from the other person, and even not to expect that the other person may recover soon, may recover quickly, because we know, I mean, those are in a way beyond our control. And even actually we can attribute it to the karma. Say someone else is going through some difficult situation, and it could be even his karma. So that is, and sometimes we are trying to help him, but his karma may be very powerful. I mean, he may be going through a kind of a suffering because of his some bad thing he has done in the past life. We don't know. So likewise, different attributes are there. So that is the point actually typically highlighted in the equanimity, upekha meditation, where you are trying to help another person, but he is going through one of his previous karma, so which is beyond our capacity, beyond our control. So even though we try to help him, we can't. So at that time, we have to be equanimous. So you have to come to we have to bring our mind to the equanimity rather than we also suffer. So likewise, when we are handling these kinds of mental situations, if we know these limits, if we know these different areas, these subtle aspects, then we can properly manage it. Otherwise, we also subjected to various internal conflicts. Yeah.
Yes, yes, it seems like Bhante, we need like a lot of practice, yeah, it is tough because especially like, when you're over compassionate, especially like, when we are here, like, when we hear like all the, deaths happening in Sri Lanka, and, it's overwhelming to us, and we are not there, and, what can we do? We are trying our best to help, and like, how much can we do? And, it's overwhelming.
Now our debts are getting reduced, so you have to.
Yeah, I heard that. I think it's kind of comforting. I really like to hear that.
So that's, I mean, so everyone is nowadays going through a lot of difficult situations. So it's a kind of a common thing, not only for Sri Lankans, the whole world is going through a difficult situation. So when we understand the general suffering, common suffering, then in a way we can sort of not getting overwhelmed by the compassion towards a certain group of people. Actually, that is where we have certain attachment. Now, why are you feeling more suffering or more compassion towards Sri Lanka? Why not Indians?
Yeah. because we know all the people are dying, so we feel
Exactly.
more.
So why especially Sri Lankans?
We
That
are
is
born
because
there.
we have some attachments to our mother country. We have some attachment to our own people. So that is, I mean, that we have to admit. So in a way, that way we can understand, okay, I have certain bias in my mind.
Yeah.
So for that also, I don't need to be angry about myself and angry to myself. I need to admit, yes, I am still, so say for example, myself. So I am a monk. Still, I have some attachment towards my country. So I am also going to, I am also checking what is now going on. Are they doing well? Are the deaths reduced? Are now people getting well? Let's say less infections. So likewise, I am also concerned. So why? Because I still have some attachment towards the country, still have attachment towards the country people. But when it comes to the say more understanding, so people are people in either they are in Sri Lanka or in USA or in Russia or in Australia or wherever it is, people are people. They are simply human beings. And not only human beings, then we can even consider animals and all the other beings. So likewise, when we are generalizing suffering, when we understand the suffering is something common to all the beings, then we can actually have this sort of universal compassion where there are no limitations and there are no any specific focus to only a particular group. It's a kind of a universal type of compassion. So that is where I think we come to the kind of a perfection where it is not limited to a certain group of people, which is coming out of our own likes and dislikes, our own attachment. Rather, now we understand the common suffering available to all the beings, and therefore we being compassionate. And that compassion includes ourselves as well. We haven't neglected ourselves. So ourselves are also included, and we are considering all the beings in the whole universe. So that is where the possibilities available, kind of freedom of mind through compassion, karuna cheto vimukti. So it's a very, in a way, very powerful situation. Now say when you develop loving kindness like that, so you lose all the boundaries and you can have a kind of attitude of loving kindness to the whole universe. So similar situation is available in the karuna, that is compassion, where you have sort of compassionate feeling to all the beings in the whole universe. Yeah, very interesting, very powerful. Yeah,
Thank you so much, Bante.
yeah.
If the time permit, can I ask a question
Sure,
too?
sure, please. Yes.
Bante, when we let's say that we concentrate on the present moment, and eventually we reach the mind stillness. That's
Mhm.
after that, to get to the next level of that stillness. The stillness for a layperson, it can like go away within 10 minutes or 20 minutes. We can really predict. Once you feel that mind comes to that stillness, what would be the next exercise to follow up with?
Yeah, actually, next exercise is doing nothing. So when you are well established in stillness, the moment you want to do something, that is where we go wrong. Actually, so stillness means we have already calmed down all the mental formations. And it includes not only the mental formations, the bodily formations, as well as the verbal formations, kaya sankhara and vachi sankhara. And kaya sankhara, vachi sankhara fairly calmed down, so we are in a kind of a calmness, stillness, and mind also reduce all the mental proliferation. No thinking is now going on. Now, at this situation, I mean, if mind itself get on to a distraction that we can't help, at that time, what we need to do is to recognize it through mindfulness and to slowly relinquish whatever the attachment and return back to that stillness. So that is the only thing we can do. But other time, if we think, I mean, in order to go to the next step, what am I want to do? So that is another sankhara. That is the kind of agitation arising in the mind. If we promote it, if we start developing doubts related to that, so then we are in a deep trouble. Instead of that, so it's a matter of enjoying the situation. It's a matter of being with that situation. just be at that situation. So from our side, that is the only thing that we can do. But if mind get distracted by itself, at that time we can simply relinquish that whatever the situation and come back or return back to the stillness. So just maintaining the stillness is the only thing that we can do in order to enhance that stillness. Actually, another point here I like to highlight is that while we are maintaining stillness, we have to be careful because it can lead to a kind of focused attention. It's like you are maintaining a vehicle in a highway. Say there are no other vehicles available, and you can quickly go, and you are now speeding up, and assume that there are no other vehicles. Road is also very clear, and you can even remove your hands from the steering wheel and rest, like you do in a typical bicycle. Yeah, you can simply start to drink some water while allowing the bike to ride by itself. But we have to be vigilant. Is it leaning onto the left side? Is it leaning onto the right side? So we have to be vigilant. So that's the only part we can do. We can carefully, I mean, you have to maintain some sort of observation, which is a very relaxed observation. And only if the bicycle moves towards the right or moves towards the bends towards the right, left, then only we have to intervene and again put it back to the middle. So similarly, while we are dwelling in the emptiness, while we are dwelling in the stillness, there is a possibility because of the tendencies in the mind. So mind might lean onto a certain object, even lean onto a certain type of concentration. At that time, we start to feel some tension, a slight tension. At that time, we have to little intervene and slowly release it, slowly release that grip and bring it back to the relaxed situation. Yeah.
Lot of merits
Oh,
Samdrone.
yeah, everyone's alive.
Everyone's alive.
Okay, then I think we have come to the end of the program. I think we don't have enough time to go to the book today. So if there are no any other questions, I like to wind up the session. I and like to hear from Shalika about the plans about next programs.
Okay. Thank you, Bhante, for your wonderful, actually, the sermon, as well as, like, I think it's a really good the discussions we had with all the questions. So, and our next session is going to be on October 29th at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we are going to actually keep the spiritual family night kind of on hold until further notice. I think that's all for the time being, I have to say, and thank you all for your participation, and we are looking forward to discuss that the book actually in the coming session.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for participation, and see you all in October. Teruvan Sarnai.
That was Bhante. So much merit.